The desert stretches endlessly, a vast canvas of golden sands under a sun that burns like an eternal eye. Winds whisper across dunes, carrying with them the faint echoes of lives that walked this land nearly 2,000 years ago. And there it stands, the Great Pyramid of Giza, its limestone blocks glowing softly in the first morning light, casting long, silent shadows over the barren plains. From a distance, it seems still, immutable, a monument frozen in time. But for those who dare to look closer, it hums with stories of human ambition, sacrifice, and mystery. This is not just a stone structure. It is a testament to a civilization's ingenuity and a reflection of its deepest fears and desires. How could a society, with no modern machinery, no cranes, no power tools, have lifted and placed millions of tons of stone with such precision? How did they conceive of this colossal dream and bring it into reality? These are not merely questions of engineering, they are questions of human will, obsession, and the hidden lives of those who toiled in its shadow. Imagine the first steps of a laborer, sandal-clad feet sinking into the soft Nile-side soil, carrying a block heavier than a small carriage. Imagine the mason, hands raw and blistered from chiseling limestone, pausing to wipe sweat from his brow, eyes fixed on a corner of the pyramid rising in perfect geometry. Imagine a priest watching silently, calculating the alignment of the sun and stars, ensuring that the pharaoh's vision would endure both time and the gaze of the gods. The pyramid does not reveal its secrets easily. Its smooth edges, its almost supernatural symmetry, conceal centuries of human endeavor, ingenuity, and conflict. Each stone holds the weight not just of sand and rock, but of ambition, fear, and devotion. Every surface bears silent witness to lives lived in the pursuit of something eternal, something far greater than the individual. And yet, even as it rises in our imagination, questions linger. Who were the men and women behind this monumental endeavor? How did they organize, inspire, and sometimes punish those who faltered under the weight of expectation? What rituals, sacrifices, and unspoken rules guided their hands and their hearts? These are the mysteries that have drawn the gaze of historians, archaeologists, and dreamers alike for centuries. The desert sun climbs higher, and the pyramid seems to grow taller with every passing moment. Shadows shrink, light dances along its surfaces, and the structure begins to speak in silence, as though it remembers every chant, every hammer strike, every whispered prayer uttered along its ascending steps. It stands as both a marvel and a challenge, daring us to uncover its story, to step back in time and witness life as it was nearly 2,000 years ago. As we lean closer to its secrets, one question becomes undeniable: how did ordinary human beings, with the tools of their time, shape something so extraordinary, so enduring, that it would outlast empires, kings, and even the sands themselves? The answer is hidden in plain sight, etched into every block, every alignment, every shadow cast upon the desert floor. And so our journey begins, tracing the lives, the dreams, and the relentless human spirit that crafted the Great Pyramid of Giza. Life along the Nile 1,900 years ago was a rhythm dictated by the river, a pulse that guided planting, harvesting, and celebration. The water, shimmering under the morning sun, was both giver and taker, nourishing crops while reminding the people that survival depended on its capricious flow. Families rose before dawn, their voices mingling with the crow of roosters and the soft lowing of cattle. Children chased each other through narrow streets of mud-brick homes, their laughter a fragile soundtrack to a world ruled by nature, tradition, and the shadow of kings. The marketplace was alive with the scent of spices, the glint of copper tools, and the hum of bartering voices. Merchants called out, offering dates, fish, and woven cloth, while skilled artisans displayed intricate jewelry, carved statues, and pottery so delicate it seemed almost sacred. Every object told a story, of skill, of patience, of the human need to leave something behind that might endure beyond a single lifetime. Here, ambition was subtle, not monumental, it lived in the deft hand of a potter, in the careful stroke of a painter, in the secret hopes whispered at the edge of the market stall. Yet beneath this ordinary rhythm, an undercurrent of tension threaded the daily lives of ordinary Egyptians. They were aware, always, of the grand ambitions of their rulers. pharaohs commanded not just obedience, but awe, and their decrees shaped every moment. A stone mason, for instance, would not only measure and chisel his limestone block but also wonder what fate awaited him should a single error mar the perfection demanded by the God's representative on earth. Laborers carried blocks heavier than any man could lift alone, moving them across sun-baked plains with ropes and wooden sleds, their bodies marked with the evidence of relentless toil. Among them was a young mason named Khafra, whose hands bore calluses deep enough to tell stories of decades before he even reached 30. Each morning, he rose before the sun, carrying tools and stones, his eyes tracing the rising pyramid in the distance, a monument both inspiring and terrifying. Beside him walked his friend Ammonius, a laborer tasked with hauling massive blocks from distant quarries. The two shared stories, songs, and occasional curses, their laughter masking the fear they carried in silence, fear of failing the pharaoh, of angering the overseers, of the ever-present danger of injury or death. Even priests and scribes, seated in the shade of palm trees, were not immune to the weight of expectation. They measured time by the stars, tracked the flow of the river, and calculated alignments that would ensure the pyramid rose not just as a building, but as a bridge between mortals and the divine. They whispered among themselves of omens and secrets, of rituals that demanded both devotion and sacrifice. Their lives were bound to the structure in ways that were invisible to most, yet inescapable to those who understood the magnitude of what was being attempted. And yet, life along the Nile was not only hardship and fear. Festivals, feasts, and celebrations punctuated the year, moments when the laborers and artisans could forget the weight of stone and duty, if only for a few hours. Music and dancing rose from the riverbanks, laughter intertwined with prayers to the gods, a reminder that even under the shadow of immense ambition, the human spirit found joy, defiance, and hope. But as the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the desert in fiery reds and deepening shadows, a silent reminder returned: the pyramid loomed ever larger, a test of strength, endurance, and cunning. Each block placed, each stone aligned, brought them closer to a dream that was both breathtaking and terrifying. And while life along the Nile continued in its familiar rhythm, whispers of the unknown began to circulate among the people, hints that the pyramid was more than stone and sweat, that secrets lay hidden in its very design, waiting for eyes bold enough to see. By the time darkness fell, the river's reflection shimmering under a rising moon, the young mason Khafra looked up at the partially completed pyramid. His heart swelled with pride and fear in equal measure. What they were building was not just a tomb or a monument, it was a challenge to time itself. And somewhere deep within the limestone, somewhere in the shadows of those colossal blocks, mysteries were waiting, mysteries that would take centuries to uncover, and that might forever defy explanation. The stage was set. Life flowed on the Nile, ordinary yet extraordinary, each day bringing the builders closer to glory and peril alike. And as the night settled, one question lingered in the minds of those who toiled in silence: who truly controlled the destiny of the pyramid, the pharaoh, the gods, or the people themselves? The answer, it seemed, was as elusive as the desert wind. The pharaoh's palace rose from the sands like a mirage of gold and marble, a testament to power that was both absolute and terrifying. Within these walls, life was measured not in hours or days, but in decrees, ambitions, and whispers of eternity. The pharaoh, the living embodiment of a god on earth, bore the weight of countless eyes and expectations. To him, mortality was a threat that demanded defiance, and the pyramid was his answer, a stone monument to immortality that would outlast empires, cities, and the memories of men. He was not a distant figure, untouched by fear or desire. There were nights when the court was silent and the torchlight flickered, revealing a man staring at the ceiling of his chamber, imagining the afterlife and worrying over imperfections. Would the gods deem his offering sufficient? Would his name echo forever, or would it dissolve into the sands, like so many who came before? The ambition to live beyond death was universal, yet in his case, it commanded armies, laborers, architects, and priests alike, each of them bound to his vision by duty, fear, or devotion. Among those closest to the pharaoh were his chief architect and royal overseer, men tasked with translating divine will into stone and labor. They walked the palace corridors with careful steps, balancing the expectations of their sovereign with the practical limits of human endurance. One miscalculation could mean disaster, for the pyramid, yes, but for themselves as well. Stories circulated of builders crushed by falling blocks, overseers punished for errors, and artisans whose mistakes carried the weight of wrath that could be fatal. It was a world where precision was demanded, and fear was the mortar that held society together. The pharaoh's vision extended beyond mere construction. It was a statement, a challenge to the very fabric of time. He imagined the pyramid not only as a tomb but as a cosmic instrument, aligned with the stars, the sun, and sacred numerology. Priests whispered of celestial balance, of rituals that would ensure the king's soul ascended unimpeded, and of curses that might befall those who dared disrupt the harmony. These beliefs were more than superstition, they were law, philosophy, and terror intertwined. For the laborers and masons, this translated into a daily life of staggering pressure. Young Khafra, whose hands bore the memory of every strike against limestone, felt the pharaoh's presence in every measured step. The weight of expectation was as tangible as the stones he carried. His friend Ammonius, muscles raw and blistered, silently counted the hours, the distance to the next block, the rising sun and falling shadows, aware that failure was not merely personal, it was sacrilegious. And yet, in stolen moments, they allowed themselves small joys, laughter between friends, stories of their families, dreams of freedom. These moments were brief, flickering lights against a vast shadow of obligation. The political atmosphere added another layer of tension. Court intrigue simmered beneath the palace's golden floors. Advisors argued over resource allocation, priests debated ritual correctness, and rival factions subtly vied for influence over the pharaoh's favor. A single misstep could end a career or even a life, and the tension permeated every discussion, every decision, every stone lifted on the construction site. The pyramid was not just a monument, it was a microcosm of the human condition, ambition, fear, loyalty, and betrayal all interwoven. The pharaoh himself occasionally descended to inspect the work. His arrival was accompanied by fanfare and terror alike, a mixture of awe and fear that gripped the laborers' hearts. Every gesture was scrutinized, every expression read as approval or condemnation. Khafra felt a thrill and dread at once, realizing that the success of their labor, the safety of comrades, and even their lives hung on the perception of a single man. And yet, in those brief moments, there was also inspiration. To witness the living God move among them was to glimpse the extraordinary, to understand the force driving them to achieve what seemed impossible. And as the pyramid continued to rise, so too did the human stories, whispered rivalries among overseers, secret romances among artisans, the quiet rebellion of a few daring to question their fate. Every block added was not only a physical accomplishment but a psychological battle, a test of endurance, faith, and loyalty. The question lingered like a shadow across the desert plains: could the will of one man truly shape the destiny of thousands, and in doing so, challenge the limits of what humans could achieve? The sun set behind the looming structure, casting long, jagged shadows across the desert. The workers paused briefly, faces streaked with sweat and dust, gazes tracing the monumental geometry that towered above them. The pharaoh's vision was no longer abstract, it was tangible, monumental, and terrifying. It was a challenge to the natural order, to mortality, to the sands of time themselves. And yet, within this colossal ambition, secrets stirred, whispered among priests, guarded by overseers, and etched unknowingly into the very stones. Secrets that would take centuries to uncover, and that might forever remain beyond human understanding. The night settled over Giza like a heavy cloak, and the desert wind carried with it the echoes of hammer strikes, chants, and prayers. The pharaoh's dream, the builder's toil, and the unseen forces of politics and religion intertwined, creating a tension that was both exhilarating and ominous. And as stars emerged, aligning with the pyramid's edges, one thought hung over all: what price would humanity pay to touch eternity, and what would remain hidden in the shadows of ambition? The pyramid rose slowly against the horizon, a colossal silhouette etched into the desert sky. From a distance, it appeared unyielding, perfect, as though carved by the hands of gods. But up close, every block, every edge, every measured corner spoke of human effort, ingenuity, and struggle. The people who shaped it were not mythical, they were flesh and blood, driven by duty, ambition, and fear. The secrets of their craft were tightly held, whispered among master masons and overseers, guarded as jealously as the pharaoh's crown. Among the artisans was a man named Sesh, whose skill with chisels and hammers had earned him respect and fear in equal measure. His hands bore scars that told stories of miscalculations and near disasters. Sesh understood stone in a way that seemed almost magical. He could read the grain, anticipate fractures, and coax perfection from the rough limestone blocks. To watch him work was to glimpse mastery that seemed beyond human capability, yet it was built from years of trial, error, and relentless patience. Apprentices like young Khafra followed him, learning not only technique but discipline, endurance, and the silent codes of loyalty that bound them to their craft. Transportation of the blocks was a mystery that modern engineers still struggle to unravel. Massive stones, some weighing multiple tons, were quarried far from the site, dragged across sand and river with primitive tools. Sledges slid across lubricated tracks, teams of laborers chanting in rhythm to ease the burden, their muscles straining with every coordinated pull. Mistakes were unforgiving, a slip, a misaligned stone, a collapse could cost lives. And yet, despite the danger, there was pride in the struggle. Each block positioned perfectly was a triumph of human will, a quiet defiance against nature and the limitations of the body. The pyramid's internal design, too, held secrets. Chambers and corridors carved with meticulous precision, ventilation shafts aligned to celestial points, and passageways that seemed designed to confuse or protect, all required not only brute strength but mathematical understanding and visionary planning. Priests and scribes worked alongside masons, calculating angles, studying the stars, and ensuring that every detail met divine and royal expectations. Every measurement carried consequence. A single misstep could invalidate years of work and anger the pharaoh, the gods, or both. Yet, the story of construction was not purely technical. It was profoundly human. Fear, loyalty, and rivalry shaped the workforce as much as skill and tools. Laborers whispered about overseers who pushed too hard, about accidents that claimed men without notice, about hidden punishments for those who faltered. Secret alliances formed, some to protect the weak, others to gain favor. Stories of bravery and cunning spread among the workers, a mason who saved a falling block with a desperate push, an apprentice who found a hidden flaw before disaster struck, each story a reminder that behind the stone lay courage, quick thinking, and human vulnerability. Some mysteries were never meant to be shared. Certain techniques were known only to the master builders, methods passed down orally, hidden from the uninitiated. Ramps, levers, and counterweights were employed in ways that remain debated even today. The way massive stones were lifted, slid, and aligned with astronomical precision remains partly obscured by time. Whispers of secret chambers and hidden symbols circulated among those closest to the project, hinting at knowledge deliberately concealed from the unworthy, and perhaps even from the pharaoh himself. And then there were the moments of sheer tension, the pauses when human effort met the immensity of stone. Workers would stop, sweating under the desert sun, hearts pounding, eyes tracing the next placement of a massive block. One wrong movement could ruin weeks of labor. In these moments, the air seemed to hold its breath. Even Sesh, confident and experienced, knew the weight of responsibility was not just physical, but moral, the lives of his team, the favor of the gods, the success of the pharaoh's vision, all balanced on fragile human coordination. As the pyramid grew taller, so too did the sense of wonder and fear among the laborers. They began to speak in hushed tones of strange occurrences, tools that seemed to shift on their own, shadows that moved contrary to the sun, whispers in the wind. Superstition intertwined with exhaustion, and some wondered whether the stones themselves remembered the hands that touched them, and the gods who commanded their shaping. Sesh would dismiss such talk during the day, but at night, as he lay in the sand beside a campfire, even he felt a shiver of uncertainty. The pyramid, magnificent and terrifying, seemed almost alive, observing, judging, demanding more. By the time the sun sank below the horizon, the workers were silhouettes against the monolithic structure, their bodies exhausted, their minds heavy with both pride and fear. Each block they placed was a testament to human ingenuity, and yet every stone concealed a story untold, a secret carried silently into eternity. The mysteries of construction, the feats of strength, the brilliance of planning, and the unspoken human struggles coalesced in silence, forming an enigma as enduring as the desert itself. The pyramid did not merely rise in stone, it rose in tension, ambition, and human courage. And as night enveloped the Giza plateau, one thought lingered like the whispering wind: for all the skill, toil, and devotion, would the secrets of its making ever truly be understood, or were they destined to remain hidden within the silent, eternal blocks? Beneath the towering limestone blocks, amid the rhythm of chisels and the scrape of sledges, there existed another story, one not written in stone, but etched into the bodies and hearts of the men and women who built the pharaoh's eternal vision. Life for the laborers was a constant negotiation between survival and duty. Each day began before dawn, when the desert was cool enough to move, and ended long after the sun had burned the plains. The work was relentless, physical agony tempered only by fleeting moments of camaraderie, laughter, or the shared relief of a day completed without injury. Khafra's hands were raw from hauling and chiseling, yet he rose each day with the same determination, knowing that any sign of weakness could bring the overseer's wrath. Ammonius, his companion, bore the weight of stones that could crush a man instantly, muscles trembling with exhaustion, sweat mingling with dust and blood. These men were ordinary yet extraordinary, carrying on with a quiet courage that often went unnoticed by those in the palace or beyond the Giza plateau. The human cost was measured not just in broken bones or blisters, but in dreams deferred, families left behind, and the relentless erosion of youth and vitality under the desert sun. Among the overseers, the balance between cruelty and necessity was delicate. Some were ruthless, driving men beyond the limits of endurance, punishing perceived laziness or mistakes with humiliation, fines, or worse. Others understood the importance of morale, recognizing that laborers who were inspired, rested, and respected could accomplish feats that fear alone never could. But even under the most lenient guidance, the work demanded sacrifices that weighed heavily on the soul. There were nights when Khafra stared at the starlit desert, wondering if the life he had chosen, or the life forced upon him, was worth the stones that now formed the pyramid's base. The families of the laborers lived in constant anxiety. Children ran barefoot among the mud-brick homes, unaware of the danger their fathers faced with every rising sun. Mothers whispered prayers to the gods, hoping for protection, their eyes clouded with worry as husbands and sons disappeared each morning into the furnace of construction. The social fabric was strained by the monumental task, yet woven together by small acts of resilience, shared meals, laughter during brief rest periods, and the quiet solidarity of people united by necessity. Even the priests, whose lives were entwined with celestial calculations and ritual observances, were not immune to emotional strain. They carried the knowledge that their errors could imperil souls, both mortal and divine. The alignment of the pyramid with stars and sun required painstaking calculations, and each night, as they retreated to their chambers, doubts and fears gnawed at them. A misstep could disrupt the pharaoh's passage to eternity, anger the gods, or condemn a life. The human toll was invisible in the grand architecture, yet it permeated every decision, every action, and every laborer's heartbeat. Within the workforce, subtle rebellions and personal dramas unfolded alongside the monumental labor. A mason might quietly defy an unjust overseer, a laborer might whisper encouragement to a friend struggling under impossible weight. Small romances blossomed in the shadows of the massive blocks, stolen glances, fleeting touches, the quiet heartbeat of humanity persisting amid immense pressure. These moments, though brief, were a defiance of circumstance, a reminder that even under the harshest conditions, people sought connection, love, and purpose. Accidents were inevitable. A slab of limestone could shift without warning, a pulley might fail, sending a laborer tumbling into sand and shadow. Stories of injury and death circulated among the camps, whispered warnings that reminded everyone of the fragility of life. Yet fear did not halt progress. The laborers continued, driven by necessity, obligation, or belief in the sacred duty that bound them to the Pharaoh's vision. Each placed block was a triumph over mortality itself, a defiance of weakness, and a testament to the endurance of the human spirit. Despite the hardship, there were fleeting moments of triumph and pride. The alignment of a massive stone perfectly into place, the successful completion of a section, the recognition from an overseer, these moments illuminated the toil with a fragile glory. Laborers would exchange quiet smiles, share stolen bites of bread, and whisper encouragements. Each day survived, each task completed, became part of a larger story, a narrative that transcended their own lifetimes, etched invisibly into the pyramid's enduring stone. And yet, beneath every act of courage, there lingered the haunting awareness that not all would see the pyramid completed. Many would leave the world with their names unrecorded, their faces forgotten, their sacrifices buried beneath the very stones they placed. It was a labor not only of body and mind but of spirit, a human cost hidden in plain sight, waiting for centuries before the world would come to recognize the enormity of what had been endured. As the sun dipped behind the horizon and shadows stretched across the plateau, the laborers paused to survey the growing monument. Sweat-streaked faces turned toward the rising pyramid, all mixed with fear in their eyes. The human cost was immense, yet in that labor, there was a sense of purpose, a fragile beauty in shared suffering. The stones, heavy and unyielding, bore silent witness to lives of devotion, resilience, and quiet heroism. And as the night settled, one thought lingered in the hearts of those who had labored beneath the desert sun: their bodies may fade, but the pyramid, and the memory of their toil, would endure forever. From a distance, the Great Pyramid of Giza seems almost impossibly perfect. Its sides align with the cardinal points, its angles measured with such precision that even modern architects marvel at the feat up close. The limestone blocks fit together with astonishing exactness, gaps so narrow they are nearly invisible, edges sharp and unyielding to centuries of wind, sand, and sun. How could human hands, 1,900 years ago, achieve such meticulous alignment without advanced tools? This question has haunted scholars, engineers, and dreamers for centuries. The masons and architects of the pyramid were more than laborers, they were visionaries and mathematicians, their minds intertwined with stone, geometry, and the stars. They understood concepts that, for many civilizations, would remain undiscovered for millennia. Lines were measured with rudimentary tools, yet the results rivaled modern precision instruments. Every stone was not only placed but positioned to endure the ravages of time. There was no margin for error. One misaligned block could ripple through the entire structure, imperiling both its stability and the pharaoh's divine plan. Astronomical alignment added another layer of enigma. The pyramid's corners point almost perfectly toward the cardinal directions, and its passages are aligned with specific stars. This was not a coincidence. Priests and scribes, guided by celestial observations, calculated the pyramid's placement so that it mirrored cosmic order on earth. It was a structure that connected the mortal and the divine, a bridge between human ambition and the eternal heavens. Laborers may have lifted the stones, but the vision behind the placement was celestial, transcending human comprehension. Among the builders, there was an acute awareness of the stakes. Khafre and Sesh, men hardened by sweat and toil, understood that their labor was more than physical exertion. Each stone, each measurement, carried the weight of generations and the expectation of perfection. Errors were not merely technical, they were moral, spiritual, and political. The precision demanded mastery, patience, and an almost obsessive attention to detail. It was a test of endurance, intellect, and devotion. Yet even with such skill, mysteries persisted. Scholars today debate how the blocks, some weighing several tons, were lifted and moved into exact alignment. Were ramps used? Levers? Rollers? Or did lost techniques, known only to master builders, guide the laborers' hands? Oral traditions may have preserved secrets, whispered only among those deemed worthy, then lost to the sweep of time. Every inch of the pyramid seems deliberate, but the methods remain partially obscured, leaving us to wonder whether knowledge was intentionally hidden, or simply lost. Precision extended beyond placement to proportion. The pyramid's base is nearly a perfect square, its slope calculated to an exact angle that seems to echo mathematical constants. Its internal chambers align with shafts and corridors that point to distant celestial phenomena. This was architecture that was functional, symbolic, and cosmic at once, a convergence of human ingenuity, spiritual vision, and scientific observation. The builders did not merely raise stone, they orchestrated a monument to the very laws that govern the universe. Even small imperfections take on profound significance. Tiny deviations, almost imperceptible to the eye, have fueled centuries of speculation. Some see evidence of lost technology, others of divine inspiration. Perhaps the builders themselves did not fully comprehend the forces they were harnessing, guided by intuition, faith, and relentless experimentation. Every block becomes a cipher, a message frozen in stone, inviting future generations to decode a knowledge partially hidden from time. And yet, amidst the precision and celestial harmony, there was human vulnerability. Laborers like Khafra could not escape fatigue, injury, or the pressures of hierarchy. Every precise placement required not only skill but endurance and focus, qualities tested by the desert sun, heavy loads, and the watchful eyes of overseers. The pyramid's perfection was achieved at the intersection of genius and human struggle, a balance that few civilizations would ever match. As the sun set, casting the pyramid's shadows across the desert, it became clear that its perfection was as much an enigma as an achievement. Every stone, every angle, every corridor was a testament to what humans could achieve when vision, discipline, and belief converged. And yet, questions remained, whispering across centuries. How did they achieve such alignment without modern instruments? Were their techniques deliberately hidden from history? And most haunting of all, did the builders themselves fully understand the monument they were creating, or were they instruments in a plan conceived by gods, priests, and pharaohs far beyond their comprehension? The pyramid stood, monumental and eternal, a silent witness to human ingenuity, obsession, and mystery. It was more than a tomb, it was a testament to precision, ambition, and secrets that may never be fully revealed. For those who labored, for those who envisioned, and for those who came after, the Great Pyramid remains a puzzle, a challenge, and a mirror of human potential. And as night enveloped the plateau, the stars reflected along its edges, one thought lingered in the desert wind: the greatest mystery may not be the stone itself, but the minds and souls who brought it into being. The plateau was alive with the constant clatter of stone on stone, the hammering of chisels, the groan of pulleys, and the distant, rhythmic chants of workers. Dust hung heavy in the golden sunlight, giving the air a tangible weight that seemed almost suffocating. Here, in the shadow of the Great Pyramid, life and death intertwined in ways that would shape history. Every movement, every whispered command, could spell survival, or disaster. The ancient Egyptians who toiled here were not just builders, they were participants in a silent, perilous struggle against nature, gravity, and time itself. The morning air carried both promise and dread. Workers emerged from the small, tightly clustered villages, their hands calloused, their bodies lean but hardened by years of relentless labor. They carried with them the memories of families left behind, the ache of sore muscles that never fully healed, and the unspoken fear of Pharaoh's wrath should they falter. Among them, a young stonecutter named Cayman moved with careful precision, his eyes scanning the jagged stones that had to be lifted into place. Each block, some weighing as much as a grown man, seemed almost alive, resisting the will of those who dared shape it. Cayman's life had always been dictated by the pyramid. He had been born into a family of laborers, their lineage traced through generations who had felt the unforgiving sun on their backs and the cold stone biting into their palms. He knew the subtle signs of impending danger: a stone too precariously balanced, a rope fraying under the tension, a fellow worker's stumble. These small signals were whispers of death, and they were everywhere. Yet he pressed on, compelled not just by duty, but by the hope of honor, an opportunity, rare as it was, to earn recognition from the overseers. The overseers were figures both feared and respected. Clad in linen and bearing staffs carved with symbols of authority, they moved like shadows over the construction site. Their eyes missed nothing. Every misstep, every moment of weakness, was noted, recorded, and judged. The threat of punishment was not just imagined. Injuries, accidental enough to occur in the crush of stones and dust, were often convenient for those in power. The line between accident and consequence was blurred, and the workers understood this intimately. One wrong move could mean a broken limb, or worse. As the day progressed, the labor intensified. Massive limestone blocks were dragged across wooden sleds, lubricated with water to ease their journey over sand. Teams of men heaved in synchronized rhythm, their voices rising in chants that served as both coordination and catharsis. Every slip, every strain, sent shivers down the spines of those nearby. The sun climbed higher, beating down mercilessly, sapping strength and testing resolve. A worker collapsed under the relentless weight of a slab, and the others barely managed to pull him free before disaster struck. Such incidents were not uncommon, but each carried the potential for catastrophe that could ripple through the workforce like a dark omen. Among the laborers, stories circulated in hushed tones, stories of curses invoked by the pharaoh, of spirits guarding the stones, of accidents that were somehow more than chance. Cayman had heard them all. Some spoke of workers who vanished in the middle of the night, swallowed by sand or crushed under unseen forces. Others whispered about the overseers' cruel experiments in punishment, testing the limits of human endurance under the guise of construction. These tales, half-truths and half-imagination, threaded through the camp like a slow poison, heightening tension and embedding a sense of shared vulnerability. Yet, beyond fear, there was also camaraderie. Moments of quiet humor, brief exchanges of food, and shared songs kept despair at bay. Friendships forged in sweat and shared suffering became lifelines. Cayman relied on a fellow laborer, a man named Saren, whose strength was unmatched but whose temper was equally volatile. Together, they navigated the dangers of the plateau, balancing loyalty with the need to survive. Every successful placement of a stone was celebrated quietly, a small victory that contrasted starkly with the looming threats. The pyramid was not just a monument, it was a crucible, testing every worker's limits, and some failed in ways that history would not record. As the pyramid rose higher, the risks multiplied. The higher stones became more precarious, and each lift demanded ingenuity and courage. Ropes frayed under weight that seemed impossible, scaffolds creaked under pressure, and the wind, though gentle at ground level, could sweep unexpectedly, toppling an unguarded block. Workers whispered prayers to the gods, seeking protection, their chants mingling with the mechanical sounds of progress. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the sand. It was during these quiet moments that Cayman felt the true weight of mortality pressing down. The plateau was beautiful, majestic, yet it was also a place where one miscalculation could erase a lifetime of effort in a heartbeat. Then came the incident that would forever mark the day. A massive limestone block, one that had taken hours to maneuver, shifted unexpectedly on the incline. Screams erupted as men scrambled to stabilize it. Cayman and Saren lunged forward, attempting to redirect the stone, their muscles straining in desperate unison. Dust filled the air, stinging eyes and lungs. For a moment, time seemed suspended, the block hung between life and death, a monument itself to human ambition and frailty. And then, with a crushing inevitability, it toppled. Chaos ensued. Workers fell, caught under the weight or tossed aside by the panic. The air was filled with cries, the metallic clash of tools, and the thundering impact of stone meeting stone. Cayman's heart pounded as he scrambled for cover, the screams of his friends echoing in his ears. Saren's voice called out, but he was nowhere to be seen. When the dust finally settled, the sight was a tableau of horror, injured men moaning, stones strewn like fallen giants, and a chilling silence broken only by the distant calls of overseers assessing the damage. No one spoke of what had gone wrong, it was both fear and superstition that kept words from forming. In the aftermath, the workers' morale faltered, yet they returned to labor at dawn, compelled by necessity, fear, and duty. Rumors spread quickly of hidden punishments, of Pharaoh's inspectors who would arrive to ensure order was maintained. Whispers told of injuries covered up as accidents, and the silent threat that the pyramid itself demanded sacrifice. Cayman's thoughts lingered on Sarin, missing and possibly buried beneath stone, a reminder that every day here was a gamble against fate. By the end of the week, life on the plateau had settled into a tense rhythm again. But the incident left its mark, not just in physical scars, but in the psyche of every worker. They knew the pyramid was more than a monument to Pharaoh, it was a proving ground for endurance, a test of human limits, and a silent witness to the fragility of life. Each stone set in place carried the weight of ambition, the sweat of countless hands, and the shadow of death. And somewhere, amid the rising structure, secrets lingered, buried in stone, hidden from history, whispering the dangers and mysteries of the plateau to those daring enough to listen. As night fell, Cayman sat on a ridge, looking up at the pyramid silhouetted against the twilight sky. The stones shimmered faintly, as if alive, holding stories no one would ever fully know. He wondered if Sarin was still alive, if the overseers had noticed, or if the gods themselves had taken note of human folly and courage alike. The plateau was silent, yet the air thrummed with secrets, with the echo of lives forever intertwined with the monumental stones. And as the stars blinked into existence above the desert, one thought lingered in Cayman's mind: for every block placed, a story was buried, and some would never be unearthed. Amid the rising stones of the pyramid, there were whispers that some blocks carried more than weight, they carried secrets. The workers spoke cautiously, almost reverently, of strange markings, faint lines, and symbols carved so precisely that even the sun's shifting light could reveal their hidden geometry. To the laborers, these were not mere decorations, they were messages left by those who had come before, messages that seemed to hum with intent. Some said they were blessings, others warned they were warnings, and a few claimed they were keys to knowledge too dangerous for ordinary eyes. Cayman had noticed these markings himself. While hauling a particularly heavy limestone slab into place, he paused, wiping sweat from his brow, and traced the grooves with his calloused fingers. The symbols seemed to shift under his touch, the lines forming patterns that hinted at meaning but never fully revealed themselves. It was as if the pyramid had a voice, silent, patient, yet undeniably present. He had shared his observations with a few trusted friends, but most dismissed them, attributing his fascination to fatigue or imagination. Yet deep down, Cayman felt an inexplicable pull, a growing obsession with the mysteries hidden in the stones. The scribes, those who recorded every grain of sand and every block placed, were said to understand more. They moved quietly among the workers, their reed brushes and ink-stained fingers mapping hieroglyphs that detailed labor schedules, rations, and royal decrees. But Cayman had overheard one scribe speaking in hushed tones to a colleague, hinting that the hieroglyphs concealed more than mundane records. Some scholars believed that encoded within these carvings were instructions, lost techniques, philosophical ideas, and even references to hidden chambers. Could it be that the pyramid itself was a repository of forbidden knowledge? Cayman's pulse quickened at the thought, a mix of awe and fear threading through his mind. As the pyramid grew, the deeper mysteries began to reveal themselves in subtle ways. Certain stones were positioned with an accuracy that defied explanation, aligned not just with cardinal points but with the stars themselves. Observers whispered that the builders possessed knowledge of the heavens that no ordinary mortal should possess. Cayman watched as the astronomers arrived each evening, their eyes scanning the horizon, plotting celestial movements that would dictate the placement of the next layers of stone. The combination of human labor and cosmic precision created a structure that seemed impossibly perfect. It was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, an achievement beyond comprehension, and yet one that hinted at a hidden hand guiding every action. And then there were the anomalies, stones that did not match the expected pattern, chambers sealed in ways that suggested deliberate concealment. Laborers spoke of passages that appeared only in certain light, and Cayman had heard rumors of carvings that were erased and replaced, as though someone wished to bury a secret within the pyramid's growing bulk. Some of the older workers muttered about messages to the future, written not in words but in stone, meant for eyes that would never come in their lifetime. The thought of hidden chambers, potentially housing treasures, or truths too dangerous to know, sent a shiver down Cayman's spine. The tension at the site increased as these discoveries became harder to ignore. Workers began avoiding certain sections, claiming they felt watched or guided by forces unseen. Overseers scolded anyone who lingered too long near the mysterious markings, warning that curiosity could lead to accidents, or worse. Yet, curiosity was relentless. Cayman found himself returning to these stones in the quiet of early morning, tracing the lines, feeling the energy of generations embedded in the limestone. Each touch seemed to pull him deeper into a silent conversation with the past, one that he did not fully understand but could not resist. Stories of hidden knowledge intertwined with superstition. Some believed the pyramid itself was a guardian, protecting the pharaoh's soul and the wisdom of the gods. Others claimed that trespassing too far into the pyramid's secrets could bring ruin, accidents that appeared coincidental but were, in truth, warnings. Cayman remembered the accident weeks earlier, the block that had toppled and claimed the lives of several men, including the mysterious Saren. Could it have been coincidence, or was the pyramid itself exacting a toll on those who sought too many answers? The question lingered in his mind, unresolved, as he studied the faint inscriptions once more. Nightfall brought an eerie stillness to the plateau. The workers had long gone to their villages, the overseers' tents were silent, and only the pyramid remained illuminated by the pale glow of the moon. Cayman sat alone at the base, his eyes scanning the shifting shadows, imagining the stories hidden in each stone. He traced his fingers over a cluster of markings that seemed different from the others, and in the cool night air, he thought he could hear faint whispers. Perhaps it was exhaustion, perhaps imagination, yet the sensation was undeniable. He felt the pyramid was alive in a way he could not rationally explain, listening, watching, waiting. And then he noticed it, a small, deliberate symbol, almost invisible, etched into the corner of a massive stone. It was unlike anything he had seen before, precise, deliberate, and placed as though inviting him to discover something beyond comprehension. Cayman's heart raced. What did it mean? Who had left it? And why was it hidden in plain sight, meant to be noticed only by those persistent enough, or perhaps foolish enough, to look? The air felt heavier, charged with anticipation, as if the pyramid itself was holding its breath, daring him to seek its secrets. Cayman's fascination was now tinged with fear. He realized that every stone, every marking, was part of a greater puzzle, one that intertwined human endeavor, divine ambition, and perhaps knowledge the world was not yet ready to understand. He had glimpsed only fragments, and yet the fragments suggested a design far grander than mere construction. The pyramid was more than a tomb, more than a testament to Pharaoh's power, it was a riddle written in stone, a message suspended across time. As the moon climbed higher, shadows lengthened, and Cayman reluctantly rose to return to the village. Yet the symbol lingered in his mind. The unanswered questions refused to leave. What else was hidden? What truths were buried within the pyramid, waiting for centuries to be uncovered? And most haunting of all, who else knew, and who might be watching those who dared seek these secrets? The night was silent, yet the pyramid loomed with an almost sentient presence, promising that its mysteries would not be revealed easily. Cayman glanced back one last time, the pale lunar light glinting off the massive stones. Somewhere within the labyrinth of blocks, symbols, and concealed chambers, the pyramid's secrets waited. And somewhere, perhaps, Saren's fate was tied to them as well. With a mixture of dread and determination, Cayman understood that his life, and perhaps the lives of those around him, was now bound to a structure that would outlive generations, silently guarding knowledge that could change everything, or destroy anyone who dared uncover it. As the pyramid neared completion, whispers grew louder among both workers and scholars alike. The massive stones, precisely aligned, the hidden markings in corridors, and the strange anomalies within the structure fueled speculation. Cayman, still haunted by the accident that had taken Sarin and others, could no longer dismiss the sense that there was more to the Great Pyramid than brute labor and royal decree. Some of the older, more secretive artisans spoke of knowledge too dangerous to share, hints of methods, techniques, and rituals that had been handed down through generations in hushed tones, like sacred secrets passed from father to son. But now, many of those keepers of knowledge were gone, leaving only fragments of stories, mysterious symbols, and unanswerable questions. Outside observers, those who recorded history in ink on papyrus, also began to question what they saw. Reports spoke of extraordinary feats that seemed impossible, massive stones moved with uncanny precision, chambers aligned with celestial bodies, and certain interior spaces designed to remain hidden even from the laborers themselves. Some scholars theorized that these anomalies could only be achieved through secret knowledge, perhaps a guild of master builders whose methods were jealously guarded, passed down orally, and deliberately obscured from the masses. The question lingered in Cayman's mind: if these methods were known only to a select few, what did it mean for those who risked their lives every day to simply follow orders? Conspiracy, whether real or imagined, began to take root in the camp. Workers murmured about overseers who seemed to vanish for hours, returning with strange objects or giving instructions that made no immediate sense. Certain blocks were moved multiple times, repositioned in ways that defied conventional understanding. Cayman noticed patterns in these movements, subtle shifts that suggested intentional concealment. Were these just practical adjustments, or were the overseers hiding something? The workers dared not ask directly, for questions could be interpreted as defiance, and defiance was punished swiftly and often brutally. The tension escalated when rumors surfaced that Pharaoh himself had grown increasingly secretive about the project. Only select scribes, priests, and overseers were permitted to enter certain corridors. Stories told of hidden chambers containing inscriptions that revealed not just the glory of the pharaoh, but cryptic messages hinting at knowledge of the cosmos, divine wisdom, and perhaps even forbidden rites. Some believed the pyramid was a map, a guide to sacred geometry and celestial alignments encoded in stone for those who could decipher it. Others whispered that it was a tomb in name only, a monument designed to mislead the uninitiated while housing secrets no ordinary mortal was meant to uncover. Cayman felt the weight of these mysteries pressing down on him. Every time he navigated the higher tiers, placing stones with meticulous care, he wondered if he was unknowingly participating in a greater conspiracy. Did the pharaoh intend for the pyramid to conceal knowledge from history itself? Were the accidents, the disappearances, even the strict oversight, part of a calculated effort to guard these secrets? He could not shake the feeling that the pyramid was watching, alive in some way beyond comprehension, absorbing the intentions, fears, and ambitions of everyone who dared approach it. Even outside the worksite, debate raged among scholars and priests. Some insisted the laborers were largely free men, motivated by honor, loyalty, and faith in Pharaoh. Others argued that the pyramid's scale and precision demanded a system of coercion, an army of forced labor, whose suffering was hidden beneath layers of myth and propaganda. Cayman had seen glimpses of both, laborers proud of their work, yet exhausted to the point of collapse, overseers who commanded respect, yet ruled through fear. The line between devotion and duress was thin, and the pyramid itself seemed to magnify that tension, its stones silent witnesses to human ambition and human frailty alike. The mystery deepened when unusual artifacts were discovered embedded in the construction. Small tools, fragments of carved stone, and even peculiar metal objects whose purpose was unclear. Some theorized they were evidence of forgotten technologies, methods lost to time, or even mystical devices intended to harness unseen forces. Cayman stared at one such artifact, a small metal piece shaped with deliberate precision, and wondered who had placed it there, and why. The overseers dismissed such items as unimportant, but Cayman could not ignore the feeling that every anomaly was a piece of a puzzle he was only beginning to perceive. The human cost of the pyramid's secrets was undeniable. Stories circulated of workers injured in strange accidents, stones shifting without warning, scaffolding collapsing inexplicably, or ropes snapping for no discernible reason. Some claimed these events were divine warnings, punishments for those who asked too many questions. Others, like Cayman, feared a more calculated design, as if someone higher up orchestrated these dangers to ensure that knowledge remained tightly controlled. The deaths were silent lessons, buried with the victims, their stories erased to preserve the illusion of inevitability. Even historians from future generations would debate the methods used to construct the pyramid. Was it the result of slave labor, innovative techniques, or perhaps a combination of both? Did the ancient Egyptians possess knowledge now lost, or was the pyramid merely the triumph of human ingenuity under extraordinary conditions? Cayman had no answers, only a growing sense that the pyramid was far more than a tomb. It was a riddle, an enigma built stone by stone, containing truths some would die to protect and mysteries some would die trying to uncover. In the evenings, Cayman found himself walking the perimeter alone, tracing the pyramid's angles in the fading light. Shadows stretched unnaturally, creating shapes that suggested hidden chambers and secret passages. He imagined the whispers of those who had died before him, their voices merging with the wind that swept across the plateau. The stories of lost friends, mysterious symbols, and unexplained artifacts coalesced in his mind, forming a tapestry of intrigue that hinted at a hidden narrative far greater than any official record. And then came the most unsettling realization: the deeper he looked, the less certain he became about the very nature of the pyramid. Was it a tomb, a temple, a map, or something else entirely? The further he delved into its construction, the more it seemed that each stone, each symbol, each corridor was deliberately designed to challenge understanding, to reward insight, and perhaps to punish curiosity. Cayman felt a chill run down his spine as he realized that some secrets might never be meant for human discovery, or that discovering them could come at an unimaginable cost. The night brought a quiet, almost oppressive stillness. Cayman could hear nothing but the wind and the distant calls of nocturnal animals. The pyramid towered above him, its presence overwhelming, almost sentient. He could feel the weight of centuries pressing down, of lives lost and sacrifices made, of knowledge preserved and deliberately concealed. Somewhere within its massive interior, hidden chambers and cryptic inscriptions waited, as if daring the brave, or foolish, to uncover them. Cayman's thoughts returned to Sarin and the others who had disappeared, their fates entwined with the pyramid's secrets. He realized, with a sense of dread and fascination, that he too was now a part of a story that stretched far beyond his lifetime, a story of conspiracy, mystery, and knowledge hidden in plain sight. As he turned to leave, a final thought lingered like a shadow across his mind: the pyramid was not merely a monument of stone, it was a monument of human ambition, fear, and secrecy. Its builders had left clues, deliberately or unknowingly, and some of those clues were still waiting to be deciphered. What truths did they contain? Who would live, or die, to uncover them? And how many mysteries would remain buried for eternity, swallowed by the stones themselves? The questions were endless, and the pyramid stood silent, patient, and eternal. The pyramid, now nearly complete, cast a monumental shadow across the Giza plateau, its sheer scale both awe-inspiring and terrifying. From a distance, it appeared as a flawless monument, perfect in every line and angle, yet those who had labored to raise it knew the truth hidden beneath its glittering exterior. The legacy of its construction was not written only in stone, it was etched into the bodies, minds, and memories of the countless men and women who had given their lives to bring it into being. Each chiseled block bore witness to human endurance, sacrifice, and ambition, and as Cayman walked the site in the quiet hours before dawn, he could feel the weight of history pressing down upon him. The village that supported the workers had changed irreversibly over the years. Families once thriving now bore the scars of absence, fathers and sons lost to the plateau, mothers who spent their days fearing that the next dawn would bring grief. Yet life persisted, as it always had, a fragile rhythm beneath the shadow of an enduring monument. Markets buzzed with trade, children played amid the remnants of construction, and the elders recounted tales of the pyramid's raising, sometimes with pride, sometimes with bitterness. The stories were incomplete, fragmentary, but they hinted at a truth that no monument could fully capture: the pyramid was as much a record of human lives as it was of Pharaoh's glory. Even the pharaoh himself had begun to grasp the implications of his creation. His advisors, scribes, and priests reported not only the technical achievements of the builders but also the social consequences, the resentment brewing among workers, the occasional acts of rebellion, and the psychological toll of labor that stretched men to their limits. In private, the pharaoh considered whether the cost had been too great, whether the monument would inspire awe or fear, admiration or horror. And yet, like the pyramid itself, his decisions were calculated to endure across time, a legacy that would outlive not only himself but generations yet unborn. The pyramid's legacy extended beyond immediate human experience. It became a focal point for cultural identity, a symbol of divine authority and cosmic order. Astronomers, priests, and scholars studied its alignments, discovering that its angles corresponded not merely to cardinal directions but to celestial phenomena. Seasons, solstices, and the movement of the stars were encoded in its structure, offering guidance for agriculture, ritual, and spiritual contemplation. The pyramid was no longer just a tomb, it was a bridge between earth and sky, between mortality and eternity, an achievement that demanded reverence, study, and secrecy. Cayman often wondered what future generations would make of it. He imagined scholars and explorers walking the desert millennia later, gazing up at the stone monolith, marveling at its scale, precision, and mystery. Would they comprehend the sacrifices made to create it? Would they grasp the human stories buried alongside the pharaoh's ambitions? Or would they see only a cold, monumental achievement, oblivious to the sweat, blood, and lives that had shaped every block? The thought unsettled him. Some legacies are visible, etched in stone for all to see, but the most profound legacies are those invisible, threaded into the lives of those who lived, labored, and suffered to bring an idea into reality. The stories of the workers persisted, however, through oral tradition and subtle markings on the stones themselves. Cayman's own experiences, his fear, grief, and curiosity, became intertwined with the pyramid's story, forming a narrative that no scribe could fully record. Each time he traced the carved symbols, he felt the whispers of those who had come before, men like Sarin whose names were now forgotten but whose presence lingered in every corner of the structure. These silent voices created a tapestry of memory, a human dimension that elevated the pyramid from a mere architectural feat to a living chronicle of endurance, ingenuity, and sacrifice. The aftermath of the pyramid's completion also brought social and political change. The labor system, refined and tested during construction, became a model for future projects. Overseers who had proven their skill rose in prominence, while others faded into obscurity, their contributions erased from official records. Yet the lessons of labor management, the balance of coercion and incentive, became part of the cultural memory, shaping how pharaohs and their successors approached monumental building projects. Cayman observed these shifts, realizing that the pyramid's influence extended far beyond its stones, shaping governance, social structures, and the collective psyche of the civilization. Even for the pharaohs, the pyramid's completion was both triumph and burden. It symbolized the ultimate expression of power, wealth, and divine favor, yet it also exposed the vulnerability inherent in wielding such authority. The sheer scale of the endeavor, the risk of rebellion, and the dependence on thousands of lives meant that every decision carried weight. One miscalculation could undermine legitimacy, spark unrest, or leave the ruler's legacy incomplete. And so the pyramid became a mirror of human ambition, glorious, unyielding, and fraught with peril, a reminder that even those at the height of power were bound by forces beyond their control, mortality, labor, and time itself. The stories of the pyramid did not end with the workers' lives or the pharaoh's reign. Over centuries, travelers, historians, and explorers would attempt to unlock its secrets, each generation uncovering fragments while mysteries remained deliberately concealed. Chambers remained hidden, inscriptions faded, and anomalies puzzled those who came seeking answers. The pyramid became a symbol of enigma, drawing curiosity, obsession, and sometimes hubris. Cayman, now older and scarred from years of labor, understood that he had participated in something greater than himself, a creation whose full meaning could not be comprehended in a single lifetime. The monument was eternal, but human understanding was fleeting, and that contrast created a tension that would echo across history. Yet even in its permanence, the pyramid held a warning. It stood as a testament to the consequences of human ambition, the sweat and blood required to achieve greatness, the sacrifices demanded of the ordinary in service of the extraordinary, and the fragile nature of memory and recognition. Cayman often reflected on Saran and the countless others whose lives had been spent and lost on the plateau. Their stories, though largely unrecorded, were embedded in the pyramid, a silent testament to endurance and suffering. In every stone, in every shadow, the echo of those who had shaped the monument lingered, a haunting reminder that greatness carries a cost. As Cayman gazed upon the completed structure, he felt a mixture of awe, sorrow, and unease. The pyramid's perfection was undeniable, yet beneath that perfection lay countless human stories, secrets, and mysteries that would remain unsolved for centuries. It was a work of art, science, devotion, and control, all entwined into a single, monumental expression of human capability and ambition. The plateau was quiet now, the builders gone, and only the wind and stars remained as witnesses. Yet the pyramid seemed to hum with the memory of those who had labored, suffered, and dreamed within its shadow. The final moments of Cayman's reflection were tinged with a quiet dread. Though the pyramid was complete, the questions it posed were endless. What had been lost to achieve such perfection? What secrets had been buried alongside the pharaoh's glory? And, most hauntingly, what would future generations uncover, misinterpret, or fail to comprehend entirely? The monument stood eternal, yet it demanded more than admiration, it demanded reflection, understanding, and respect for the human lives interwoven into its stones. In its stillness, it promised to keep its mysteries close, teasing those who sought answers, offering glimpses of truth only to those patient and perceptive enough to see. And as the sun rose, casting the pyramid in golden light, Cayman walked away, his steps heavy but purposeful. The plateau was silent save for the whisper of the wind across the stones, carrying with it stories of labor, loss, ambition, and ambition's price. The pyramid's shadow stretched far beyond the desert sands, reaching into the hearts of men and the pages of history, a testament to the endurance of human creativity and the permanence of human secrecy. It was a legacy that would endure millennia, a puzzle as eternal as time itself, and a reminder that behind every monumental achievement lies a hidden world of struggle, sacrifice, and mystery, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to look.